China also learn a lot from the West, but mutual learning, right? Global China, now you and me. So there's a very famous philosopher says, I can be I only through you. So China be China because through the West, a new China. So Western cannot divide it. Chinese people support Communist Party leadership because of the much traditional Chinese culture. It's not from the West or from the Soviet Union. Like the Belt Road Initiative, it's not just 8 years old young baby. It's 2,000 years plus 8 years. Because the Silk Road, more than 2,000 years. So Communist Party also 5,000 years plus 100 years.
Professor Wang Yi, welcome to China Forum. So tell me, what is exactly the Chinese Communist Party?
The three keywords of the Chinese Communist Party. First is about China, Chinese. But we think about Chinese as a whole family, 56 ethnic groups. To understand China, that's very important. To understand China as a civilization, as a cultural community, not a nation state. So this year is not just 100 years of Communist Party's birthday, it's maybe 5,000 years, plus 100 years. Second is about communist. Chinese people support Communist Party communism, much traditional Chinese culture. So China lies from the revolution to construction, social construction, and then to cultural. Third keyword is party. China, Communist Party represents the whole Chinese people and the whole Chinese nations. It's not just the interest groups. So I was always suggest that we should change the name. Just translate Chinese 共产党. If understanding Communist Party of China from just the same expression from the English, you misunderstand the China. China.
So maybe if it is not about changing the name, how do we do?
Change the paradigm, change the mindset, change the logic of thinking maybe. To think about China as China, not as reflex of the West of history. That's very important. The Chinese understanding of civilization is different with the Western. Like Hegel said, China, civilization means past. But Chinese means civilization is living, is alive. So that's different.
The Pew Research result shows that the Western perception towards China has been declining. The image has been really kind of diluted since the pandemic. So how do you explain this?
The pandemic crisis, I think, is a mirror, reflects who is the true friends of China, who is not. Actually, developing countries love China much more than before. Chinese government foreign assistance without set any so-called political conditions or to the people in the world, more than 100 countries. But the Western people use of China more negatively because it's a shock in the pandemic. People's psychology suffered a lot. Even some politicians like Trump, they blame this Kung Fu virus, it's a Wuhan virus, a China virus. But the real reason for the misperceptions about China, about the pandemic crisis, I think is because of Chinese understanding of life different with the Western people. Western people think about man and woman are created by the God. You have the original thing. But Chinese think about our lives is given from my ancestors. But in China we have three gods. Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. Even they are not gods. So we are true freedom of thinking. There's no original thing, and the power is not evil. There's no need for the checks and balance. The trinity of the man, nation, and the party. It's difficult or even impossible to wake up some guys who pretend sleep. So it's a silent majority as well. Another story, I met one so-called China expert from Italy. Okay. He wrote 6 books on China, but he never visited China. The Chinese government said, why not visit China to tell the true story of China? He said, no, if I visit China, I understand the true China, and then what I wrote, the Italian people and the Western people cannot believe me anymore. So that's the
Same applies to the Xinjiang problem currently. Some Western countries' ambassadors, we actually invited them to visit Xinjiang, but they refused to do so because they really don't know how to tell.
Yeah, if the true story is different, whatever they report, they make the many preconditions that you cannot agree, and then blame you, say you are not really want me to visit. Whatever Google, Facebook you should channelize. Google cannot enter China because they cannot follow Chinese law. We only ask you, if you be the Chinese guest, you should, according to Chinese law. Yeah. So, don't you think about the rule of law is your slogan? You should support the Chinese rule of law, okay, firstly. Second, we have the freedom of speech. We don't have your Google, but we have our Baidu. If I don't have anything, but not allow you to enter Chinese market, it's not responsible for the people.
But during this co-evolution process, I think two sides, China and the West, need to build at least the fundamental mutual trust. But seem to me, this kind of fundamental mutual trust is being destroyed.
To be frankly, the Westerners never trust China.
From the very beginning?
Never. Yes, during the opium reform period, China joined WTO, that's so-called trust China. But their trust to China is China will follow their model. China will be westernized from the market economy, then political system, then ideology. And the US engagement policy failed. If you cannot manage you challenge the Western superiority or Americans' hegemonic power. Definitely they not trust you. Like the pandemic crisis.
Nowadays, one misconception from the West is that China wants to export its model and to teach the Western countries on how to develop a country. Is that true?
Confucian says, three people work there, one can be my teacher. But American people don't think that way. If three people work there, I will be their teacher. They always want to teach. Chinese always learning. So we learn Buddhism from Asia and India, but we never sell Chinese religion to other countries. Japan and South Korea, they learn Buddhism from China because they like. They learn Confucianism from China because they like. We never sell them to them. And also, one very important key expression of Confucian is 有教无类. So all the people can be educated, but in the Western, particularly for the Americans, only those who can be converted as my religion, as my ideology. Otherwise, you are others. So that's different. Anybody can be yourself, to be yourself, not to be converted to another model. So that's the true freedom.